My name is Claire Whitfield and I am 32 years old. I live in a small rented flat above a laundromat in Manchester, England, with my daughter, Lily, who just turned SCOW. Mom, why do you always eat last? Lily asked me that on a Tuesday evening, over a pot of pasta that barely stretched between the two of us. I laughed it off the way I always did, because moms like watching their little ones eat first. Silly. But Lily wasn't buying it anymore. She was getting older, sharper, noticing things I thought I'd hidden well enough. She decounted, apparently, for nights that week. My plate had stayed empty until she was asleep. I hadn't told her the truth that rent had gone up again, that my hours at the cleaning agency had been cut, that the money her father was supposed to send hadn't received in 3 months. Her father, Daniel Ashworth, wasn't he just some man who'd walked away? He was the CEO of Ashworth Logistics, a company with offices overlooking the Manchester skyline, a company whose name I saw on billboards every single day, on my way to scrub other people's kitchens. We met when I was 24, working reception at his family's firm before it became the empire it is now. He'd been charming then, ordinary almost, before the money changed everything about him, including, eventually, me. I never asked him for a fortune. I only asked him to remember he had a daughter. That Tuesday night, after Lily fell asleep clutching her stuffed rabbit, I sat by the window with my phone in my hand, staring at an email I'd received that morning from his lawyers. Not from him, from his lawyers. 3 lines, cold and precise, informing me that any further, unsolicited contact regarding financial support would be considered harassment. Harassment. That was the word they used for a mother trying to feed her child. I didn't cry, not that night. I'd used up all my tears years ago. Instead, I opened my laptop and did something I'd never let myself do before. I searched his name, his company, his upcoming public appearances, looking for anything, any opening, any chance to be heard. What I found instead stopped my breath entirely. A press release, dated 2 days earlier, announcing Ashworth Logistics' newest campaign, a charity initiative for underprivileged single mothers across the UK, with Daniel's smiling face front and center, holding a plaque that read, "No child should go hungry because of an absent parent." I read that line 4 times before I understood what I was looking at. He wasn't just ignoring us. He was building his empire's image on the very cruelty he was inflicting on his own daughter, and I was about to find out exactly how far that lie went. The morning after I found that press release, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Daniel, standing on a stage somewhere, talking about children who deserved better fathers, while 3 streets away his own daughter was eating dinner without me. So there'd be enough for her. I decided to go to the charity event myself. It was open to the public, a gala at a hotel in the city center. Tickets sold as a fundraiser. I didn't have money for a ticket, so I found a service entrance instead, the kind I knew well from years of cleaning jobs. I still had an old agency uniform in my closet, navy blue with the company's faded logo. I put it on, tied my hair back, and walked in through the kitchen like I belonged there, carrying a tray I picked up from an unattended cart. Nobody looks twice at a woman in a uniform carrying food. That's the strange privilege of being invisible. I found him near the main hall, laughing with a group of investors, a glass of champagne in his hand, his tailored suit worth more than 3 months of my rent. For a moment, I just stood there, tray balanced on my arm, watching the man who once told me he'd love me forever now smiling for a room full of strangers about the importance of family. Then Lily's voice echoed in my head. "Mom, why do you always eat last?" I set the tray down on a side table and walked straight toward him. "Daniel." His smile faltered for exactly 1 second, before the practiced charm slid back into place. "Claire, this is a pre-C8 event." "I know," I said. "I used to clean rooms just like this one for less than what you spend on wine in a night." A woman beside him, elegant, clearly his date or perhaps something more, glanced between us with polite confusion. "Daniel, who is this?" Before he could answer, I said it plainly, loud enough for the small circle around us to hear. "I am the mother of his daughter, the one he hasn't sent a single pound to in 3 months, the one his lawyers threatened with harassment letters for asking him to remember she exists." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut glass. Someone nearby lifted a phone, recording. Daniel's jaw tightened, his eyes darting towards security already moving in my direction. "Claire, you need to leave," he said quietly, gripping my arm. "Let go of me," I said, pulling back. Should I also tell them about the £50,000 that went missing from your father's account the same month you married into the Whitmore family fortune? His face went white, because that was a secret I was never supposed to know. Security reached us before Daniel could respond. Two men in dark suits took my arms gently but firmly, steering me toward the service exit, while the small crowd of investors whispered behind raised hands. "I didn't fight them. I said what I came to say." And the phone that had been recording was still pointed our way when I looked back one last time. Daniel's face wasn't angry anymore. It was afraid. That fear told me something I hadn't fully believed until that moment. The secret was real, and it still had power over him. I'd learned about the £50,000 3 years earlier, back when we were still speaking, back when I still believed he might come around. He'd been drunk one night, uncharacteristically loose-lipped, and told me a story he probably didn't remember sharing by morning, about how his father's accountant, a quiet man named Mr. Pierce, had helped move money out of the family trust right before Daniel's wedding. Tiana Whitmore, money that was supposed to belong to his younger sister, Claire, who had disabilities and depended on the trust for her care. He laughed about it then, called it restructuring, said his sister would never need to know, because he'd take care of her another way. He never did. I hadn't thought about that story in years, but standing in that hotel kitchen, being walked out like a nuisance, it came back with startling clarity, because I finally understood why he'd married Anna Whitmore so quickly, why the Ashworth company had expanded so fast right after, why nobody ever asked questions. Once outside, the security guards released me onto the pavement. I straightened my jacket, catching my breath, when my phone buzzed. A text message from a number I didn't recognize. "Could meet me tomorrow. Coffee shop on Deansgate, 6 a.m. I saw what happened tonight. I think we should talk. Margaret Pierce." Pierce, the same name Daniel had mentioned that drunken night, all those years ago. My hands trembled as I typed back a single word. "Why?" The reply came almost instantly. "Could because my father kept records of everything he was forced to do, and because Daniel's sister deserves to know the truth, just as much as your daughter does." I stood there on the cold Manchester street, the gala's golden lights glowing behind me, and felt something shift inside my chest. Not fear anymore, but the first real spark of power I'd felt in years. Someone else had been carrying Daniel's secret too, and tomorrow I was finally going to hear all of it. I barely slept that night. Lily kept asking why I seemed so far away, and I kept telling her it was nothing, just tired from work. I hated lying to her, but some truths take time to become safe enough to share. The coffee shop on Deansgate was quiet the next morning. Tucked between a bookstore and a shuttered boutique, a woman was already seated in the corner booth when Ed, silver-haired, maybe a scout tie, with sharp eyes and a leather folder, resting on the table in front of her like something she'd been guarding for years. "Claire," she said, not as a question. "Sit, please." "I did. You Ray Mr. Pierce's daughter?" She nodded. "My father passed away 18 months ago. Before he died, he gave me this folder and told me to keep it safe, in case the day ever came when it needed to matter." She slid it toward me. "I think that day is now." Inside were bank transfer records, a signed memo bearing Daniel's father's letterhead, and a handwritten note in shaking cursive. "My father's confession," she called it. It detailed exactly how £52,000 had been quietly moved out of a trust fund belonging to Daniel's younger sister, Rose, a woman with cerebral palsy who Ed in a care facility outside Leeds, funded entirely by that very trust. "Daniel told me Rose was taken care of another way," I said quietly. Margaret's expression hardened. "Rose is taken care of by an underfunded charity home that reduced her physical therapy sessions last year because the family stopped topping up her account. Daniel visits twice a year, writes a check for the cameras and leaves." My stomach turned. "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" "Because my father was afraid of losing his pension, and after he died, I was afraid of a lawsuit I couldn't win alone." She looked at me directly. "But last night, I watched a woman stand in a hotel, his money built, and tell the truth, in front of investors, knowing exactly what it would cost her. That's the kind of person I could trust with this." I stared at the folder, feeling its weight far beyond paper. This wasn't just about Lily's missed birthdays or unpaid support anymore. This was about a disabled woman quietly robbed by her own brother, and a company built partly on that theft. What do you want to do with this? I asked. Margaret's eyes didn't waver. I want Rose to get what's hers. And I think you Ray the only person Daniel Ashworth has ever underestimated. Enough to make that happen. I looked down at the folder, then up at her. And for the first time since that gala, I smiled. Then let us make sure he regrets it. We spent the next 4 days building a plan instead of just carrying anger. Margaret knew a journalist, Priya Anand, who had spent years investigating corporate fraud for a respected financial paper. Priya listened to everything: the trust records, Rose's underfunded care, my own unpaid support, and didn't blink once. This isn't just a family scandal, she said, spreading the documents across her desk. This is fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and possibly falsified charity claims. GC and his No Child Left Behind campaign. If we publish this properly, it won't just embarrass him. It could end him. But Priya wanted one more thing before she'd run the story. Confirmation from Rose herself, so no one could later claim we'd spoken for a disabled woman without her consent. I drove to the care facility outside Leeds with Margaret 2 days later. Rose was 38, sharp-minded despite her physical limitations, and far more aware of her situation than Daniel had ever given her credit for. He calls it looking after me, Rose said, her voice steady, threaded with old, tired anger. I call it being erased. I haven't seen a full statement for my own trust in years. When I told her about Lily, about the hunger, about the lawyer's threats, something shifted in her expression: recognition, maybe, of a shared kind of invisibility. He does this, Rose said quietly. He makes people disappear quietly, so nothing ever looks like a crime, just absence. She looked at me. You Ray not going to let him make you disappear too, are you? No, I said. I am done disappearing. Rose agreed to speak with Priya on record. That evening, back at my flat, I sat beside Lily while she did her homework. And for the first time in months, I let myself imagine an ending where this fear wasn't mine to carry alone anymore. Then my phone rang. An unknown number, but I recognized the voice the instant he spoke. Claire. Daniel's tone was different now, no charm left in it. Only something colder, more careful. I heard you have been talking to people about old family matters that don't concern you. They concern your daughter's dinner plate, I said. And your sister's physiotherapy. There was a pause, long enough that I could hear him breathing. You have no idea what you Ray about to start, he finally said. Drop this, Claire, for Lily's sake. Things can get complicated for people who make noise about my family. The line went dead before I could answer. I looked down at Lily, still bent over her homework, unaware that somewhere across the city, a man with far too much power had just threatened us, and I realized, with a chill, that this was no longer only about money. Daniel's threat sat heavy in my chest for the next 2 days, but I refused to let it stop me. Still, I wasn't foolish enough to ignore it either. I called Priya first thing the next morning. He knows, I told her. He called me last night. Sounded like a warning. Priya's voice stayed calm, professional. Then we move faster, not slower. Men like him don't threaten people they think are powerless. He threatens people he is actually afraid of. That afternoon, something happened that confirmed exactly how afraid he was. I received a call from my landlord. Apologetic but firm: my lease, renewed just 2 months earlier, was suddenly being reviewed due to an unexpected change in the building's ownership. I didn't need to ask who the new owner was. I already knew. That night, Lily tugged my sleeve while I sat frozen at the kitchen table, staring at the eviction notice email. Mom, are we going to be okay? I forced a smile I didn't feel. We Ray always okay, baby. I promise. But inside, fear and fury were tangled together so tightly I could barely breathe. He wasn't just trying to silence me anymore. He was trying to make an example of what happens to people who challenge him. I called Margaret that night, my voice shaking. He is coming after our home now. Her response was steady, almost gentle. Then we stop protecting him from consequences and let the consequences find him first. The next morning, Priya's article dropped, not a small local piece, but a full investigative feature, published simultaneously across 2 major outlets, complete with the trust documents, Margaret's father's confession, Rose's on-record testimony, and a final paragraph detailing my own unpaid support in the charity gala confrontation. The headline read, Kunkun, the CEO who built an empire on absence, Inside Daniel Ashworth's Hidden Betrayals by Nina M. The story was everywhere shared, quoted, dissected by financial analysts and parenting forums alike. Ashworth Logistics stock dipped within hours. Investors who'd smiled beside him at the gala were now issuing careful statements, distancing themselves from concerning allegations. My phone buzzed nonstop with numbers I didn't recognize, journalists requesting comment, strangers sending support, a few sending hate, but one message stood apart from the rest. Are seeing just after noon. It was from Daniel. Can you don't understand what you have done? I am going to lose everything. I stared at those words for a long moment, thinking of empty dinner plates, threatening lawyer letters, and a disabled sister quietly robbed for over a decade. Then I typed back, comment certain in a way I'd never felt before. No, Daniel, you lost it the day you decided we were people you could erase. The days that followed moved faster than I could process. Ashworth Logistics board called an emergency meeting. Two major investors withdrew their funding publicly, citing irreconcilable concerns about leadership integrity. The charity that had proudly stood beside Daniel at the gala issued a statement severing ties completely, quietly removing his face from every campaign banner within 48 hours. But it was the legal fallout that hit hardest. Margaret, with Priya's help, had already filed a formal complaint with the Charity Commission and a separate CCL claim on Rose's behalf for the misappropriated trust funds. A financial regulator opened an inquiry into Ashworth Logistics' charitable claims, questioning whether public funds raised at the gala had ever reached the families they were meant to help. I was called in for an interview with investigators not as a suspect, but as a witness. I told them everything, the missed support payments, the harassment letter from his lawyers, the eviction attempt on my flat the moment I spoke up. Every detail I gave matched perfectly with Rose's testimony and Margaret's father's records, forming a pattern too consistent to dismiss as coincidence or personal vendetta. 3 weeks after the article's publication, Daniel resigned as CEO of Ashworth Logistics to focus on personal matters, though everyone reading the headlines knew exactly what that really meant. The board, desperate to salvage what remained of the company's reputation, publicly committed to fully funding Rose's Care Trust retroactive Eli, with independent oversight this time, and issued a formal apology to families affected by past leadership decisions, a careful phrase, but one that included, unmistakably, Lily and me. My landlord's ownership review mysteriously resolved itself the same week. My lease reinstated without explanation, though I suspected Ashworth's legal team had far bigger fires to manage than one flat above a laundromat. I visited Rose again before the final court hearing. She held my hand tightly, tears in her eyes. Whatever happens to him now, she said. You gave me back a voice I'd lost years ago. That night, tucking Lily into bed, she looked up at me with the same curious eyes that had started all of this. Mom, she whispered, are we going to be okay now? I kissed her forehead, and for the first time, my answer wasn't a comforting lie. Yes, baby. This time, I mean it. But one hearing remained. The final court decision on both the trust fraud case and my own long overdue claim for Lily's support and Daniel. The final hearing took place on a gray Thursday morning at the Manchester CCL Justice Centre. I sat beside Margaret and Rose, my hands folded tightly in my lap, while across the room, Daniel sat beside his lawyers, stripped of the confidence he used to wear like a second suit. No cameras flashing for charity photos this time. No investors smiling beside him. Just a man facing the full weight of choices he thought he'd buried well enough. The judge's ruling was thorough and unflinching. Daniel was ordered to repay the full £52,000, plus accumulated interest, directly into Rose's independently monitored trust. He was found in breach of fiduciary duty regarding the original transfer. And separately, the court ruled disassi Eli on my claim full backdated child support, adjusted for his actual income, rather than the modest figure his lawyers had tried to claim, along with legal costs for the harassment attempt against me. But the moment that mattered most wasn't the numbers. It was when the judge addressed him directly. Mr. Ashworth, wealth does not exempt a person from responsibility to their family. If anything, it magnifies the harm caused when that responsibility is abandoned. Daniel didn't look at me as he left the courtroom. He didn't need to. I wasn't looking for his acknowledgement anymore. I'd already gotten what actually mattered. Months later, our LCS looked different in ways I once thought impossible. We moved into a small terraced house with an actual garden. Not because of Daniel's guilt money alone, but because I'd used part of the settlement to finally finish the bookkeeping course I'd abandoned years ago, landing a steady job at a small accounting firm run by, fittingly, a woman who'd once been in a similar position herself. Rose visits us most Sundays now. She and Lily have become inseparable, drawing pictures together at our kitchen table. Rose patiently teaching her card games with hands that don't always cooperate the way she wants, but never once complaining. One evening, as I set 3 full plates on the table, one for me, one for Lily, one for Rose, my daughter looked up with a small, satisfied smile. "Mom," she said, "you rain not eating last anymore." I looked at her, at Rose, at the life we'd rebuilt from documents in a leather folder and a question asked over a half-empty pot of pasta. "No, baby," I said softly, "not ever again." The end.